In the third tape of this repair series, we'll be discussing the various repairs to chains, repair of hinges, repair of clasps, and changing out various findings. We'll also demonstrate how to repair pen backs and pen stems, as well as how to switch out earrings from pierced to non-pierced and vice versa. Sometimes the jewelry repair person is called upon to repair chains. This is a fairly easy procedure with a basic cable chain such as this one. Other chains become more complicated and require more practice and experience to be able to repair them properly. Before repairing a chain, you should assess if it's actually worth the repair. A chain such as this one only has one break in it, but by hanging it, you can see that it's got a lot of stiff, kinky areas in it that indicate that the whole chain is worn out, and this chain really should be replaced rather than repaired. Even if the wear is not that evident, it's a good idea on a delicate chain to go ahead and take a look at it through a loupe to see what kind of condition the rest of the links are in. If there are a number of worn spots in it, the cost of repairing it properly may far exceed the actual value of the chain, unless of course there's a sentimental value involved. This is especially true with gold fill chains. Heating on a gold fill chain will destroy the plating or the finish on it, and the cost of refurbishing this is quite expensive. In this case, it may be cheaper just to replace the chain. If you're not sure of the carat of a chain, it's a good idea to take a look at the tabs or the findings on the end to see what carat that they say that the chain is. Be aware, though, that if a chain has been worked on or altered in any way, these tabs may not match the actual quality of the chain. That's the case with this chain, where there's a 14-karat stamp on it, but it's actually silver colored, and an acid test shows that this chain is sterling. It may have had a plate on it at one point that's worn off, but in any case, it's mismarked. So have a gold test kit on hand to be sure that you don't run into problems like this. Another plating situation that you may run into is the current trend towards doing a flash plating over an actual gold chain. This gives it a higher carat, richer color, but causes problems in repair. These chains are both 14 karat, but the darker one has a flashing over it, and if you repair this or heat it, you'll have to either remove or replace the plating on it to make the chain look like it originally did. Before you begin chain repairs, you need to make sure that you've got the right tools for the job. For heavier chains, parallel jaws are a good plier to have. Because of the way they operate, you can move very heavy links without distorting them. For more delicate chains, it's a good idea to modify a pair of needle nose pliers so that they're even finer than they originally began. When you modify a tool like this, you want to make sure that you don't overheat the tips, as this will soften them and make a less secure plier. Something like a heatless Mizzy wheel is an excellent tool for grinding these down. Once you've ground them, you may want to smooth the tips off a little bit with some emery paper. It's a good idea to modify some tweezers also, so that you'll be able to manipulate the links on very delicate chains. These standard tweezers have had the tips narrowed down quite a bit on them. It's a good idea to do this to some locking tweezers also, and you might want to do this to an assortment of sizes. These larger locking tweezers can be used for larger link chains, and the tips have been thinned down on these also to hold them securely. This is a slightly smaller pair of locking tweezers for more delicate chains. The thin tips that are slightly bent allow you to hold the chain securely and still be able to see where you're working. If you use a soldering pick for these jobs, it's a good idea to bend the tip on one so that you can access the links easier than with a straight pick. If you're going to use these for soldering, it's a good idea to use the steel ones, as a titanium soldering pick won't allow you to flow solder up on it and do the operations that you need to do in chain repair. It's very important that you use as little solder as possible in chain repair. This prevents the links from freezing up together and also eliminates a lot of cleanup work. It's a good idea to take some solder and roll it out a little bit thinner on a rolling mill first so that when you clip off pieces, they're very thin. The pieces that you use need to be clipped very, very small, especially on delicate chains.
In commercial chain making, powdered solder is rubbed into the joints, cleaned off the links, and then fused in a furnace. Some hollow link chain actually has a solder core. With this type of chain, you need to be extremely careful. Overheating can draw the solder out of the core and onto the surfaces of the chain.
The correct way to open a jump ring is to move the ends sideways with 2 pairs of pliers. This ensures proper alignment when you close them back down and eliminates distortion of the ring. The most common areas for a chain to be worn are either in the center of the chain where a pendant hangs off of it, or at the ends where the chain attaches to the clasp. If these links aren't very badly worn, you can usually just build up a little bit of solder in the link to restore it. In any case, when you're doing repairs on a chain, you need to have good control of your torch. In addition, you can use some anti-flux to prevent your solder from flowing into unwanted areas.
Often the repair is a simple rejoining due to one link which was broken and has been lost. Open one of the end links, rejoin the chain, and solder. Use care to keep solder from flowing onto adjacent links. Trying to separate links which have become fused with solder is very difficult, if not impossible.
If you've only heated the chain in a very localized area, you won't need to buff it after pickling and rinsing it. Just rubbing it with a polishing cloth is adequate.
It is almost impossible to buff a chain without getting it caught in the wheel unless you secure it to a larger object, such as a mallet or a piece of wood. This will protect you from injury and the chain from damage.
Generally, when a chain shows wear around the area where a pendant has been hanging off of it, the bail to the pendant will be worn as well. When a customer brings in both a chain and a pendant, it's a good idea to check the bail to make sure that it doesn't also need some attention. If it's only slightly worn, you can just flow a little solder into the bail, being sure to protect any stones if necessary, and this will take care of the problem. Another common type of chain is a curb link chain. This is constructed exactly like a cable chain, except that the links have been twisted and then flattened to give the final look. These are repaired in the same manner as a cable chain, although you've got the added difficulty of reshaping the links to conform to the flatness of the design. It's a good idea, if you can on one of these, to remove a damaged link and connect 2 good links to do your repair work. Since most chain is machine-made these days, there are many types of chains that are similar from different manufacturers. It's a good idea to keep on hand pieces of different styles of chain that you frequently have to repair. You can either buy short links of this from your supplier or keep on hand links when you shorten a new chain. The more challenging chains are the ones that are more complicated than cables or curb chains. Before repairing one of these, you need to understand how it was made. It's a good idea to take a look at one under magnification to make sure that you understand its construction and that you can visualize how you're going to repair the piece before you start working on it. A herringbone chain is constructed of double or triple interlocking links that have been flattened. The flexibility of this chain depends on the links all being able to move freely. If it's been pulled or kinked, this will stiffen an area, which also weakens the area. This is a typical place for the chain to break. If the chain has only been slightly twisted, it's possible to straighten it out by placing it on a steel block and lightly hammering it, first with the round end of a rivet hammer, to align the links properly, turning it over as you go to make sure you even it out from both sides. And then once they all lay properly, you can use the flat end to smooth this out a bit. Once again, this is done very lightly from both sides. The chain can then be polished out if necessary. This restores the flexibility and the original look to that area. It's virtually impossible to reweave a herringbone chain properly. Generally, these are repaired by doing a butt joint.
Recut the broken ends with small sharp scissors or soldering snips. This will give 2 clean cuts, which will solder together nicely. Don't use diagonal or side cutters, which make a beveled cut. It is helpful to have heat sinks on either side of the repair. You can use tweezers, single-edge razor blades, or even a couple of coins. Butt the ends, making sure not to rotate the chain, putting in a twist, and use only a tiny sliver of solder. With a herringbone chain, a break occurs through 2 links because of its double link construction. After soldering, you'll end up with a stiff link. Make sure to tell the customer there will be a frozen link. If you do the repair correctly, there will be only 1. 3 stiff links is very noticeable on this type of chain. Since you have heated the chain in a very localized spot, you can polish the area with a bristle wheel, lying the chain on the bench pin, or rubbing it briskly with a rouge cloth may be enough to restore the shine.
Another type of flat chain is a serpentine chain, sometimes called an S chain. It's important when you're repairing these to understand that they hinge in one direction, and make sure that when you put them back together, your ends match so that you don't have the chain hinging in opposite directions. On an inexpensive S chain, you can do a butt joint like we did on the herringbone chains. If it's a heavier, more expensive chain, since this is a single link chain, it's okay to be able to go ahead and reweave it and properly reconstruct it in that fashion.